guys, welcome to 6 Minutes for Thursday, February 9th. I'm Jason Fulmore, SC Wrestle, and thank you for tuning in to a special 6 Minutes as I talk to Level Up's head coach Donovan Pannone about his recent book, How to Succeed and Fail as a Wrestling Parent. And before I get to that, I just want to cue everybody that if you are a member of SC Wrestle Plus, I've been posting a lot of the sectional brackets for Georgia and Alabama. Well, not the brackets for Alabama, just the kind of seeds and my reflections on those in SC Wrestle Plus. Want to give a shout out to all of the Alabama, Georgia, and North Carolina wrestlers as they work this weekend to punch their ticket to the state tournament. But today we are talking Coach Pannone. We're talking with Coach Pannone about his book, and we dove just a little bit into it, not very much. There is a lot of information in there for parents. You can find it on Amazon. I will put it in the description below so that you know exactly where to go find it. And it's filled with a wealth of information that I think most parents will find very, very helpful, very, very useful. Especially if you're a new parent or a parent with a new wrestler as they begin their journey in the sport. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy my conversation with Coach Donovan Pannone. Coach Donovan Pannone, Level Up. First, how are things?
Great.
Yeah.
Practices going great. We're making progress throughout the season. Got high school state coming up, kid state coming up in a month. Yep.
Yeah, busy time, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
No doubt. All right, so we are actually talking because you wrote a book, which I mean, yeah. You can see from my background, I love books, and I think it's great. And there are those of us that can read within the wrestling community. But first, before we get to all that, why a book? Like, what was kind of the driving factor behind writing a book?
So I actually started it about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Right after Open Level Up. It didn't really have to do with that. I've got a good friend of mine who has authored a book, and we were kind of talking about, my purpose in the world and that kind of thing. And he's the one who suggested it. And I thought about it, and, and I wasn't 100% for it at first, but it was like a seed that was planted. Kind of kept thinking about it. And I felt like, I've done this a while now. I've been coaching 28 years. And back then it would have been 23 years. And there's just been so many things that I've learned, and my nature as a coach is to share and to help others. And so
right.
As I went through the process, I guess, of being a parent, at that time, my son was probably in middle school, I guess. And there's just always like advice and things that I would give to people. And they're like, man, that's really good stuff. You need to write that stuff. You need to write it down. You should write articles. And so I started trying to capture little things as I went. And then finally, like I said, 5 years ago, I started it. But then after about 6 months, I set it aside and I realized that I need to finish this process. I had a couple different audiences I wanted to talk to, but parents were a big one. And I needed my son to graduate and for me to have gone through the whole journey through at least him getting to college before I really could give practical advice that was based on real experiences and not just theoretical coach speak.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and you've straddled that. I mean, you've been a coach, you've been a parent of a wrestler who's gone through the process. And I mean, I can only imagine like the level of coaching of parents, not only of the kids, but the coaching of parents.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like about is the title, and is How to Succeed and Fail, as a wrestling parent. So, why put the and fail in there? I mean, I think it's really important, but I want to get your perspective on it.
Yeah. So like you said, the coaching of parents is a big part of being a wrestling coach, at least in my opinion. At least I'm a club coach. I run a training center. And so I have a variety of different people of different experience levels that come through. And Um, I've seen so many kids not achieve their goals, partially because of the way the parents interacted with them. And I'm always a problem solver. I try to get to the root cause of why. And one of the problems I felt like I needed to solve was the parents getting in the way, whether it be pushing too hard or not pushing enough, not realizing the potential that the wrestler had and holding them back. So the and fail part was seeing all the, failure might be a strong word, but it's catchy. But I've seen so many people, so many wrestlers quit the sport or get quote unquote burned out, mainly because of the things that their parents did. And, I felt like it would be a good way to get people interested in reading the book, to be curious about all these things that they might feel like they've done to hinder the progress.
Yeah. So for those, I mean, it is out now, but if you haven't read it yet, it is kind of a guidebook. It is kind of a, it's kind of partial reflection of your own kind of process. It's kind of partial reflection of you coaching and having those interactions. One of the things I really like about it is that you started with what is success, and I love to begin there, because success takes lots of different forms for lots of different people. And as a coach, it's important to assess what that means for each of your kids and everything else. Yep. But it also is super important for the parents to understand what success can kind of look like, because I think we all in our minds say success is being a national champion. Well, there's lots of successes.
Yeah. So I had to think really hard about how I wanted to approach that, because I felt like it was an important way to start the book, to define and kind of establish a benchmark of thinking about why should you be reading the book, and what are you trying to get out of this, and what does success really mean. But I think it's really cliche to also say success, wrestling is just about learning life lessons. And that's true. It's true. But the lessons that are learned are about bouncing back from not achieving what you wanted, right? Two people wrestle the match, one wins and one loses. That's just the facts of wrestling. Right. And the progress is made by both winning more frequently and feeling that feeling of winning and what quote unquote success is. But throughout that process of trying to climb the ladder, it's how you learn how to succeed, the process it takes to get better at something, to evaluate your strengths and weaknesses, and to have a short memory in wrestling, especially in tournaments. So like, it's a little bit of both, right? Like, nobody likes to lose. Winning is more fun. So this is not a soft coddle your children book that says it's, it's okay to, like it's not just about the winning. It isn't. It's not just about the winning, right? But winning's more fun. So learning that process of what it takes to make progress, and to learn how to work hard, and to learn how to bounce back from adversity, that to me is the definition of success that does go beyond wrestling and into life.
Yeah. So one of the things that you talked about, and I want to get to the progression that you just mentioned, but before we get to that, you talked about three specific things as far as an expectation trap in that kind of section of the book. And I thought it was pretty powerful. And I want to just go ahead and read them real quick. Number one, they learn how to deal with the subconscious emotions through experience. Number two, the parents shouldn't pile on more emotions in these situations. And three, let go of the concept of expectations. Now, my question to you is, I think that's pretty hard for a lot of parents. How do you convince them? I mean, you've worked with lots of different parents in your time as a coach. How do you get them to kind of understand that?
Well, these are all skills, just like learning a double leg is a skill that takes practice over time. And I think just knowing that there's a concept of letting go of having expectations of what your wrestler is supposed to do out there is the first step, and being aware that that's even possible helps. And then recognizing every time you're putting more and more pressure on them, and realizing how much that is affecting them both in a negative or potentially a positive way. Expectations aren't necessarily a bad thing.
Right. I
if
mean, we
they're
all
healthy.
have them. I mean,
Right. But, and so that's kind of one of the things I learned, like through my own journey as a parent. And I'm sure we're going to touch on this. My son was not very good when he started, and people were actually felt sorry for me because of how often he lost, and me being a wrestling coach. And back then I didn't really have a lot of expectation. I just wanted him to have fun and learn the sport. And then he started winning. And all of a sudden now I'm expecting him to win more. I have this picture in my head of what the match is supposed to look like.
right.
And when it doesn't go according to script, that's when this happens, right? When the picture of what's supposed to happen doesn't meet that expectation, that's when parents freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you have to let go of that concept of expectation. Every time they jump a level, it's a completely fresh new slate of wrestlers and skill levels that they're going against. And so if you can just completely let go of that concept, much of the stress goes away. And that's the same thing I would tell a wrestler too.
Right. Well, and you talked about that in the progression of the wrestler. And I think it's so important for a parent's perspective to understand it's going to be, I mean, and it begins, and I think you begin with, kind of the basics and loving the sport and, all those sorts of things. But it's going to be like 2 steps forward, a step back, it's going to be that evolution. And you've seen that. The thing I think that's really hard is the parent who kind of don't want to go through that evolution. That
Right. Well, look, growth is hard, right? Anytime you learn and grow, and you have to get yourself outside your comfort zone to grow, the wrestlers having to do that every time they go to a practice, right? Every practice when they learn a new skill, where they go up against somebody tougher than they're used to, like there's a stretch and there's a growth that happens, and the parent is along for that ride as well. And so, it's certainly not easy, but to that point, I think if you understand that progress is not linear, that progress has ups and downs along the way, and if that's your new expectation, those downs don't become as surprising.
Do you have these conversations with the parents that are in a part of Level Up often?
Every day.
Okay.
Every day. That's like, I'm dialed in at practice. I'm coaching, but there's always talk after practice. There's always talk at tournaments, especially at tournaments. That's to me where the most of the learning comes from a parent's standpoint, is to manage, their expectations of how the tournament should go. And if their wrestler loses, how they deal with that. That's a big part of the job to me.
So in the middle part of the book, I really like the fact that you talked to some athletes who had kind of gone through this. And I think that those, not really testimonials, just kind of their stories kind of help you understand, because you have kids who have achieved an awful lot. You have kids who, have achieved less and those sorts of things. And getting to understand their perspectives is really important, especially I think from a new parent's perspective to the sport, and trying to understand kind of the process that is necessary. What was the decision in terms of trying to invite them to share their experiences?
So I had a lot of the book done, and I had thought about including interviews in there to get perspectives that I thought parents would get value from, because it's a real person. But it was going to be a lot of extra work to do it. And so I was kind of debating it. And then when I read, I talked through the content of what I wanted to do with one or two of the parents I had in the room. And they were the ones echoing that we really want to hear from the wrestlers themselves. And so I went ahead and said, all right, I'm committed. I'm doing this. And so I think I have 8 or 9 different interviews in there of different wrestlers who all started in different times with different skill levels, and all have made it through to wrestle in college other than one who's still in high school. And to see the unique path and journey that they went through,
right,
and how each of their parents was a little bit different, but there was some common trends. And to me, it's one of the most powerful things in the book, honestly.
mm-hmm.
The biggest reason why I think is, especially a parent of maybe a wrestler who's been around for like 3 or 4 years and it hasn't quite clicked yet. And you see that all of these wrestlers, Caleb Henson, for example, didn't win a single match his first year wrestling.
Right.
He didn't even place in state, but maybe one time before he was in 7th grade. And he's one of the top ranked wrestlers in the nation as a true freshman right now.
Right.
Right. And it's crazy to think about that. There's, in Gabe Arnold's story, he talks about I think in 5th grade or 6th grade, the first national event he went 0-10. And we just got back from Wildwood Duels up in New Jersey with some of the little kids that we have. And some of them weren't quite, quote unquote, ready to go, but they, I prepped them for what they were going to experience. And I reminded them that Gabe didn't win a single match. And now he's going to be wrestling for University of Iowa next year.
Right. Yeah,
so
no, it's
a critical part of the book.
Yeah, no doubt. And I actually think that from the, I guess, an outsider's perspective, you provide a lot of the bones and, kind of the perspective and those sorts of things. That's kind of some of the meat on the bones is their perspective of kind of what's gone on in their journey. I think it really helps with the context. So the last question I really want to talk about is the end of the book where you talk about your journey but not just your journey. You say your journey, but I mean, it's the parents' journey, but it's also, you talk about your journey, through that process. And then you provide, one of the things I liked about it is you provide really specific actions of kind of things that parents can do, things to keep in mind. It's not like it's not like it's common knowledge, although I would say a lot of it you read and you go, oh yeah, of course. But it's really helpful to be reminded of those things and understand your journey and that sort of thing. So how did you decide that was going to be kind of the end of the book and kind of wrapping those things up?
I'm a big believer in taking action, right? Like I've always been somebody who, and I don't know if it's a real word, but who likes to operationalize things, right? You have a conversation, you're trying to make a plan for something, you talk about all these ideas and it's like, okay, so what? What are you going to do with that now, right? How do you fix it? How do you move forward? How do you get better? And so I wanted to make sure that the end of the book had very practical, specific advice that was tied into the rest of the book that took some of those lessons from those wrestler stories, from my story, and how can you truly apply that to literally being at practice? What should you be doing out of practice? How should you talk to your wrestler on the way home? What should you say and do before, during, and after wrestling matches, right? Those are the critical moments where that relationship is forged and the parent has influence over the experience the wrestler has with the sport. And so I felt that, and what's funny is I wrote some of those lessons first, did the interviews and my story after, and luckily it all was the same common threads.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I proved myself that are the real things. It's not just some theories out there. But I also felt like my particular story was unique because, and I've heard some parents who've read the book talk to me about this now, because David, his first 3 years, he was 3-59. His first 5 years, he won 13 matches and lost 76 of them. And most kids wouldn't have gone through that much losing, right, before they just thought, wrestling's not for me. And I never forced him. I never manipulated him necessarily to
stay with it,
be a wrestler, right? Like I encouraged him because I saw potential in him, but it was always his choice. And I think seeing that somebody could go from that much losing to becoming a national All-American, to be a 3-time state champion, gives some encouragement of a real life person who's gone through the lows and the highs. And then, okay, specifically now, what are those lessons to take away from those stories?
Yeah. Well, I think it's tremendous. I think it's a really great resource, how to succeed and fail as a wrestling parent. Coach Pannone, where how can somebody get it? How can they order it? I know it's on Kindle. Is it in other places? Is there a hard copy? Like, I love to read hard copies.
Here we go.
All right, there you go.
Yep. So it's on Amazon. It's live on Amazon right now. There's a Kindle and a paperback version. I hope to start recording the audio version in a couple weeks, but that process is going to take some time. So I would tell people who are waiting on the audio version and if they're itching to get information out of it, to go ahead and buy the paperback now. I also have a website that I've set up for parents specifically. If you, it's at parents.levelupwrestling.com.
Okay.
But if you just go to levelupwrestling.com, it takes you both to the training center, a parent's website, and a website for coaches now. So I've got articles on there, some other guides for things like college recruiting and making weight and, skin infections and stuff like that.
Yeah. Great. That's fantastic. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time. And I can't wait for the follow-up version, how to succeed and fail as a wrestling coach or something along those lines.
Maybe.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Appreciate it, Jason.